Hello, good afternoon. My name is Nicole Galacci. I'm hosting this mentorship session on communications through the CareersNow program. CareersNow is Food and Beverage Ontario's workforce development initiative for Ontario's food and beverage processing industry. The program connects students and grads to employers in the Ontario job market. And we're offering things like these mentorship sessions as well as job fairs, job ready skills training, and you can access all of this via Job Seeker, the CareersNow Job Seeker portal, which we'll put up in the chat now, so you can access that and start and create your profile. And yes, welcome. I'm excited today. We have three speakers today joining us. Isabel Doctor, who is our program leader. So I'm excited to have Isabel join us today, the first session that we've had her on, and Catherine and Stephen. So we'll go right ahead. We will finish at 5, I should add. Please think of some questions and we'll ask those throughout the session. You can put them in the chat and I'll certainly ask our speakers. And if we don't get around to all of them, we can certainly ask them afterwards and get the answers for you. So each person will speak for about 10 minutes about their career progression, how they started in the career that they're in, their education, all that good stuff. And as I say, we'll open it up to questions afterwards. So Catherine, if you want to go ahead.
Thanks, Nicole. Thank you to CareersNow for having me here today. I'm excited to be here with everyone. I'll take you through sort of how I landed where I am today, and then some of the interesting things about the current job as it relates to working in agriculture and agri-food from a communicator's perspective. So after high school, I went directly to university. I didn't really have much of an idea as to what I wanted to do. I applied to a number of schools in Ontario, and I ultimately landed at Wilfrid Laurier University because I liked sort of the environment. It was a bit of a smaller school, but closer to home. And I, again, didn't have much of a clue at all what I was going to be interested in. So I just landed there in a sociology program. I took a poli-sci class just as there's some interest in it for me on the curriculum. And so I took it and I realized that I really enjoyed the content. So I quickly sort of moved out of the sociology path into a political science major. And that's where I spent the first 3 years at Laurier in a poli-sci major. I moved into a communications minor in my very last year. So I had a bunch of classes that were able to move me into a minor. And then I started to focus on the comms realm with that minor in year 4. So then I ultimately graduated from Laurier with a BA in honors in political science, but with a minor in communications. From there, I didn't have a whole lot of actual paid experience, but I did have a number of volunteer initiatives and things like that I had been involved in. So while it wasn't paid experience, it was still good experience, not directly related to communications in agriculture, but somewhat related to communications, but also related to sort of public policy as well. So I realized out of university that the types of jobs I was looking for, I would require some more technical sort of hands-on business experience that I did not have from my undergrad itself. It was more theoretical in nature. So I ended up in a graduate program at Sheridan College. It's a graduate certificate program, so you do need a degree of some sort in order to get in. It's not an entry-level program, and it's 1 year. And I took international business, and I chose international business because I was looking for somewhat of a finance element as well as basic business functions as well. So I landed in that IB program, and it was not at all related to communications or political science, but it did give me a very sort of technical business background, which has been quite helpful in my career going forward. It pops up every once in a while, and I think I'm really glad I took that program, because had I not had that sort of foundational finance background from that program, I would have no idea how to manage current budgets and things like that today. So it was certainly worthwhile. It was only a year, and it was a much different experience from university and from my undergrad, but I would really recommend it to anyone who's out of university and sort of looking for more technical hands-on experience. Definitely college is very applicable for that reason, and a number of other reasons, obviously. So I graduated from Sheridan College. They also had sort of like an internship program, and that too was of great value because ultimately it's where I landed in my current path. So I had worked in a couple of different internships. The industries themselves were not all that exciting to me. And then I landed an opportunity at Vineland Research and Innovation Center, which is a horticulture research center based in Niagara, Ontario. And it's a national center. So they have research and commercialization contracts with farmers and agribusiness and scientists all over the world. And they're trying to sort of raise the profile of horticultural research in the country. And also, there's a number of programs that are in place to help farmers and the local agri-food industry. So very cool place. When I got there, it was sort of in its infancy. It was a government research center that had not had a ton of money rolled into it in the last couple of decades, and they needed to reinvest. And so I got there at a great time because we were able to sort of design the communications and PR programs from the ground up. And there was a lot of opportunity there. So that's how I fell into the ag and food sector and space, and really, really loved it. My experience at Vineland is that there were so many different stakeholders across a number of different, international, provincial, Canadian, and different groups that I was experiencing so many different things. And so I was meeting so many different people. There was a large stakeholder element to it. There was a large communications element to it, but also a government relations aspect because the center was largely funded through provincial and federal money. So it was a really dynamic, sort of fast-paced moving job. And it very quickly, I realized just how big and how important agri-food is. And there's so many opportunities in this sector, in a number of different ways. People don't traditionally think about communication jobs in agriculture. And there's so much opportunity to tell our story, to all kinds of different stakeholders. It's so very important. And without the right people and the right tools in place, we're not getting our message out to Ontarian and Canadian consumers alike. And so that's where comms is really important and also very exciting. So I spent 5 years roughly at Vineland, really loved it. Again, it was such a great opportunity. And then I had an opportunity to move to Chicken Farmers of Ontario. So that's currently where I am today. I've been there I'm in my 9th year now. I started at CFO as a manager of communications. And today I'm currently the Senior Director of Communications and Stakeholder Relations. So I've managed to build my career at CFO over almost the last decade. And it is also sort of a very fast-paced and dynamic organization. CFO, so we represent the chicken farmers in the province, but we're also part of a supply managed system, which ensures that Canadians have access to, safe, reliable chicken, and that we're matching supply with demand. And so there's a large regulatory component to the work at CFO, which is one aspect of it. There's a large government relations component to the work at CFO, which is another aspect of it. And then there's the sort of comms, ag and food, and farmer relations aspect of the job. So the role of a communicator at CFO or with a commodity board is also really dynamic. Every day is different. We're dealing with live animals, and so that has, a number of implications. We're dealing with all kinds of regulatory provisions, and ultimately, ensuring that Ontarians have a steady supply of access to locally grown food. And without food, what do we have? So it's, at the end of the day, it's something that's, I think it's really meaningful work. It's very, I say to people all the time, like, you have no idea how fast-paced and dynamic this organization is. Nobody believes me, but it is true. There's always something going on, and there's always a challenge, but there's always an opportunity. And I've also, over the years, I've really come to appreciate working with farmers. They're just, such a great group of people that ultimately they're very community and these are family-run farms, and they're doing their best to feed Ontarians and feed Canadians. And it's a group of people that I really enjoy working with. So that's sort of my very quick sort of forte into comms. I'll stay in this industry. Agri-food, I'm on the agriculture side, but agri-food is huge. So many opportunities in agri-food right now. And so, it's a sector that continues to grow. We'll always be feeding people, and there will always be opportunities for comms jobs in this sector.
Thank you, Catherine. That's awesome. I have a bunch of questions, but I'll leave questions to the end. But before we move on to Isabel, I do have one quick question. Sure. Because I'll forget. You mentioned you've been in your current position for about 9 years. Mm-hmm. How's it changed from when you started? I mean, the world has changed. Everything's turned on its head right now in particular, but really since the day you started, how's your actual role changed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So many ways. My specific industry has evolved so much. We've really focused on the use of technology. And so when I joined CFO, it was very much a paper-based business with all these regulatory processes, being done on paper. Today, everything is fully digitized. The farmers are running their business from the barn, from an iPad, in order to do all their reporting requirements and things like that. So that's one side of sort of the comm work that has been really revolutionary since I got there. But just changing consumer demands. So over the last 9 years, consumer demands for chicken choices has really changed. And so Chicken Farmers of Ontario has had to be incredibly proactive and progressive in order to keep up with changing consumer demands. And so a lot of the work that I do rolls into, ensuring that we are continuing to provide Ontarians with the chicken that they want, and making sure we have programs in place for the farmers to be able to deliver. So as those demands quickly change and evolve, we have to be there and ready to go. From a management perspective, so I came in as a manager. I didn't have any direct reports at the time. I now manage a full team of about 4 FTEs who are specialists in their role. So somebody works in GR, somebody works on the farmer side of things, on the corporate side of things, and then we have some administrators. So that has also really changed for me, and that the people management piece is a big part of it, and that's certainly evolved as the role has grown.
Thank you. I've got lots more questions around just how the communications career path, I think, is much more in demand, but we'll perhaps hear from Isabel next, and Stephen, and we can explore that a bit with all of us. But thank you so much.
Thanks, Nicole.
Go ahead, Isabel.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. I see I'm central now on this video screen. So looking at myself, nice to see my colleagues up along the top. I'm Isabel Dopta. I am the program director for CareersNow. So it's a program that for those of us joining today would be familiar with, developed by Food and Beverage Ontario, and really with the intent of connecting job seekers to employers in Ontario's food and beverage processing industry. I must say, in my role with the CareersNow program, I'm often in the backstage for these type of events. So it's really a pleasure and also a privilege to be working alongside my colleagues and also friends on the panel today. Thanks very much for joining us. I can tell you that, Nicole, I know you wanted a bit of background on us in terms of our professional development, where we started and where we are today. Where I started was actually in a undergrad degree in microbiology, not in communications at all. So I've come a far way from then. I did my undergrad degree at the University of Guelph. I also did a minor in philosophy. In fact, grew up in Toronto, and it was just a nice transition from Toronto to the University of Guelph. I've always enjoyed being more rural outside of sort of the urban center. And so getting away from Toronto when I was younger was something that I looked forward to, and Guelph was perfect for that. I ended up never really going that far away from Guelph, either personally or professionally. It sort of became my new home base. I graduated from the University of Guelph, and first stop was through connections, as these things often happen, networking that happens within education and professionals that you meet when you're in university. So my first job ended up with the Agricultural Adaptation Council, and that's where I started. I started my career right from the very beginning in the agri-food industry. The Agricultural Adaptation Council still exists. It's been around for many, many years now, and they deliver federal and provincial funding programs specifically in support of the food and beverage processing industry and also farming industry in Ontario. And I started in a project coordinator role, really learned quickly, did quite a bit of reporting to a board and worked with stakeholders, which meant I worked directly with the nonprofits that represent farmers and food processors, and even retailers, actually, in Ontario's agri-food industry, and worked with those stakeholders in developing projects that would support their particular sector, whatever it might have been. Could have been in the general space of innovation, could have been in labor or workforce development, could have been with new technology, and then liaised with government bodies and helping those particular stakeholders secure funding so that they could develop their project and support their members. And again, their members were often farmers and processors and sometimes in retail. So after a few years there, did a few different jobs. I can say I've been around a while now, so I'll just sort of summarize the next few jobs. Did quite a few different jobs working in sort of communications and policy. For nonprofit groups, again, representing farmers and processors and retailers in the industry. And so there's really a close overlap for communicators often in this industry in terms of understanding policy issues or public policy issues that are impacting the industry. And those have to be articulated well, back so that everyone understands. So when we talk about public policy, we're also often talking about regulations. And so there's a lot of writing, communicating, outreach that has to be done on issues that are impacting the industry, or are of concern for whether it be consumers or the general public, or government bodies are feeling that they need to make changes or drive improvements to support the industry. And so this is across all sectors, all economic sectors in the country. It's not exclusive to agri-food. But that was sort of the space that I found myself working in. And when you're working in policy and you're doing communications around policy, you can't help it. You end up dabbling into lobbying or advocacy. And so again, everyone knows what happens with lobbyists. I've never been a lobbyist proper, but I've certainly worked in that general space and been supportive of lobbyists that really, again, need to just connect with government officials, political officials, and have those conversations that are necessary to drive change that are beneficial for the industry, beneficial to consumers, beneficial to society. And there's a lot of communications that happens around that, a lot of writing and a lot of outreach and engagement. So it all marries up quite nicely. That led me into, I ended up being recruited into a role with the provincial government. The government of the day was Liberal. And so there's no two ways around it. When you get pulled into a minister's office, as I was with Minister Leona Dombrowski, with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, you get really steeped into the politics of things. So that was a complete crash course for me. My role within the minister's office was some communications, some policy work, some stakeholder outreach. And again, all of this sort of marries up nicely, especially when you're sitting at Queen's Park. So that was an incredible experience, actually learning how government works and how it operates. Spent a year there, just over a year. And then there was a provincial election, so provided further support to an MPP at the time in her constitut office, which did her ghostwriting for her, did all her prep with her for her debates. And she was successful in securing her seat again. So that was really enjoyable and a good time. And then from there ended up met Catherine Goodish. She just talked about Vineland Research and Innovation Center, and that's where I ended up. Also, I was recruited into the role of Director of Communications there, and Catherine was already working at the organization, and we immediately made what I would say was a powerhouse team. And Catherine talked a little bit about that organization, but it was just an incredible ride in terms of being with a fairly large public-private partnership that started quite small. So I think when Catherine and I were there together, there were 5 of us at the beginning. And then when I ultimately left, I was recruited into a different role I'll talk about shortly, but there were over 120 people and PhD scientists and some extraordinary innovation and research happening at that facility. And it was great fun. And I look back at that period of my career really, really fondly. From there, I was recruited after the time that I had at Vineland Research and Innovation Center. I was recruited into an organization that's now known as Food and Beverage Ontario. So it's the organization that runs CareersNow, but previously was called the Alliance of Ontario Food Processors. The board of directors was very interested in doing a full rebrand and governance overhaul of the organization so that it better represented Ontario's 4,000 food and beverage processors, which and also did a much better job highlighting the importance, the sort of the criticalness of the industry to the well-being and health of not just Ontarians, but Canadians and people around the globe. I mean, it's a bit in a way the best kept secret. Ontario's food and beverage processing industry is the #1 manufacturing sector employer, which is hard to believe actually sometimes because we just don't talk about it enough. That means that there's over 125,000 people employed in this industry, and it's growing. It's growing actually hand over fist very quickly. Obviously, it's got to keep pace with growth in global populations. And so the demand for the workforce to develop, and not just develop in terms of people, of course, that's key, but also in terms of skills development and skills training is so important. And so enjoyed, many good years with Food and Beverage Ontario. I've been with them now, I guess that would be 10 years, which is incredible, almost 10 years, and launched CareersNow just sort of last year, at the beginning of last year, specifically to try to let people know more about the industry, let them know more about the career pathways, the educational pathways, and really help them understand that there's a great opportunity to build a career. And you can imagine the communications that revolves around delivering a program of this size. At the same time that I was working with Food and Beverage Ontario, I was also working for other groups, and I continue to do so with Food and Beverage Canada and Food Processing Skills Canada, and provide those organizations with similar communications support. And when I say that, I mean, communicators are often jack of all trades. So we could be doing media work, media relations work, media outreach, could be developing anything that might be used through social media. So developing social posts, developing new content, fresh content, thinking about digital marketing campaigns. I mean, it's just, when you are in the world of communications, it is a huge space. You could be preparing documents for board of directors, for senior leadership teams. You could be supporting the advocacy and lobbying arm of a particular organization or company. You could be preparing briefs for members. In our case, that would be food and beverage processors. It's really a huge area of work, communications, and there's lots of writing involved. And of course, there's lots of engagement and connecting with people. And it's an exciting area of work to find your niche and to find what you really love to do.
I love that. I mean, having worked with you for so long, I always say I send things to Isabel, she waves her wand over it, because I'll send it in, the way I want to communicate it or the way I think, and then I'm like, but you'll just make it so much better. And it comes back so much better. So you really are our fearless leader with this program. And the Taste Your Future program prior to that. So that's when we met. So I have questions for you too, but why don't we go to Stephen and then we'll have a discussion. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Two very hard acts to follow. My name is Stephen Murdoch, and I should say at the beginning, Isabel, thank you very much for inviting me. I always enjoy talking about communications, especially for new communicators and people that might just be making their way into the field. A little bit about me. My name is Stephen Murdoch. I am a proud Niagara resident. I'll touch on that a little bit throughout my presentation, but I've got a deep appreciation for agriculture, food and beverage, and I'm blessed and fortunate that my job allows me to work in those sectors. When I finished high school, I made my way to Brock University. I decided I wanted to stay in Niagara. I spent 4 years at Brock University, similar to Catherine, political science background. When I'd finished at Brock University, I was going to head over to the border to go to Deauville College and become a teacher. It was pushed on me by my parents at the time that teaching would probably be the best avenue to go. And I'm very fortunate that that didn't happen, although I still get to teach in my other role. I ended up taking a postgraduate PR program, which many years ago wasn't heard of. It was you go through university, do your 4 years, go get your MBA, maybe go get your PhD, and then see where life takes you. I finished at university and I went through the Niagara College PR program. It was a wonderful experience. I learned a ton within the year. And funny enough, the program that I took 24 years ago, I actually teach in now. And I've been fortunate to teach at Niagara College for 10 years. When I left the college, I ended up taking my first PR job was with a post-secondary institution in the GTA. I spent a better part of 3 years, mostly media relations, event management. From there, I found my way to a communications manager role with a national association out of Mississauga. Spent about 3 years with them, and then transitioned to agency. So for folks that may not be familiar with agency work, there's a joke that there's a burnout rate to 5 to 7 years maximum of people staying in agency. I'm celebrating 19 years this August. It's still hard to believe. I've enjoyed it immensely. Agency work has been so fulfilling. You really get to, as the other two speakers said, get to become a jack of all trades. Everything from media relations to event management to crisis communications and issues management. It is a whole lot of fun, and I'm fortunate in my position that I get to do a lot of work in some of the industries. We do a lot of work with restaurants. We work with the Paramount Fine Foods and the Lone Star Group and the Charcoal Group. We do a lot of work in the agri industry, do a lot of work with the Seasonal Workers Program, do a ton in the beverage. We have a national brewer that we work with, wineries and spirits and cideries and everything you can imagine. So it's a lot of fun. And I can tell you, for students that are just entering the industry or are poking around and deciding where they want to spend it. There are a few industries that I'm more passionate about, and there's a ton of opportunities around. Food and bev has just grown immensely. There's opportunities across the board. We were chatting about that earlier on the media relations side, on the digital social side. It just continues to grow by leaps and bounds. So if I'm a student looking to make a move in, you couldn't find better industries to work in. Outside of my job, as I mentioned, I teach at Niagara College. I teach in the postgraduate program. I teach PR Principles 1 and 2. Great experience. I get to work with students who, as Catherine touched on, are either university or college grads, and it's a 1-year intensive program. And it's been great for me personally because you get to see a lot of these students go on, and some of my students have actually become my clients now. So life comes full circle. And being a communicator, and I will say this, it does provide a ton of opportunities. So for me recently, I was installed on the board of directors for the Niagara Health for the regional health hospital system, which has been a great experience. And I say that because you, as a communicator, you're going to have opportunities present themselves both on a pro bono and a job work on a job basis. There are just a ton of opportunities out there for folks that are they're willing to put the hours and the time in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So you mentioned that you're already working with students and grads. So what advice would you give to students now that are perhaps unsure about their career path? Why should they look at communications as a career path in your opinion?
Sure. Good question. I think first and foremost, something I learned early on in my career is to get a mentor. Now, you're going to hear a lot of people say that to you. Find a mentor in terms of where you want to be. I had a mentor 25 years ago who did so much for me and provided that guidance. Look around. I always say to the students, we're coming towards the end of the program, and I always say, create that bucket list of 10 or 15 organizations that you think you would like to work at. And then find out who are the head of communications or people that work within the communications department, and reach out to them. Have those informational interviews. I always say to the students, they always come back after they score their first job or 10 years and say, you were so right about that. It's human nature that folks want to talk about themselves. I always tell the students the best way to position this is, I want to learn how you became so successful in communications. People will talk about themselves, and you make a great impression. I can guarantee you your resume and cover letter are going to make it to the top of the pile. Outside of that, volunteer. I think it's super important. There are a lot of organizations, especially in the food and beverage sector, who can use your expertise that may not have a budget for a full-time or part-time communications person. It's a win-win. It's a great way for you to meet stakeholders from the industry, and it's a great way for you to build your portfolio. So when you have the opportunity to do that, and then there's those vertical organizations like CPRS and IBC, the Canadian Public Relations Society and the International Association of Business Communicators, that have a ton of opportunities for you, especially if you're starting in your career. You can meet like-minded people. So there's a plethora of things that you can be doing if you're just starting your career in communications.
It's interesting you mentioned mentors. In previous discussions we've had, one of the things that kept coming up is some mentors often find you. So if you're going above and beyond and really putting in an effort in your, whether it's at school or whether you're starting your job search or in your first job, if you're showing that you care and you're really putting forward a good effort, a mentor will seek you out. You don't always have to seek them out. They'll say, I see something in you and I want you to succeed and I'm going to help you get there. But we see a lot, we sort of hear from people that say, well, I reach out to people on LinkedIn and I say, you're my mentor. You've got to do more than that. You can't just ask for their time and,
You're 100% right. Relationships aren't built on LinkedIn. Relationships are built in person. So there are a lot of people, and I know Isabel and Catherine, who I'm sure have been a mentor to several folks. They want to help, right? You get to a point in your career where I get more excitement than seeing younger people who are just entering the career, and it really brings back for me when I started and seeing them succeed. So keep in mind that you're going to have a ton of advocates for you as you make your journey along your PR/communications career. There are going to be people who are going to be in your corner cheering you on, and they just need to know. They just need to know who you are. So as you said, Nicole, it's just more than LinkedIn.
Yeah, Isabel, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I fully agree with all of that. I would also say, like, this, to anyone, this is your career. This is your life. So follow your gut, follow your instinct. You enjoy, try something, you enjoy it, stick with it. You admire the way someone conducts themselves. They have a sense of professionalism that you'd like to mirror. It feels good when you watch them. Like, go with it. I think it's tough when you're younger because it's easy to get pulled around a little bit, like kind of, like steer your own ship. So find people that you want to work with, really follow your visceral responses, your impressions, your gut, your instinct when it comes to a job. And if it doesn't feel right, it's okay to say, you know what, maybe I'm going to take a little move to the right or move to the left. Because that would be certainly, it takes time, but by following your own motivations and making sure you're true to yourself, you can enjoy every step of the way.
Yeah, I
Can-
agree with that, Isabel. Yeah, your gut tells you a lot, and
It
we
does.
all have we all have our own moral compass, as I like to call it, or internal moral compass, and that'll help guide you in terms of where you go for a career and what's the best fit for you. You just really have to listen to your gut and follow your moral compass, and things just have a way of falling into place.
It's true. Often your career finds you. Oftentimes, I mean, you know, you may have a plan, and there's things you don't even know about that will come into your path and you hadn't even thought of. And I mean, you mentioned as well microbiology. I didn't know that you started out. You know, you know, it's like you just don't know what you don't know until you start on your path and the jobs that are available in an industry. And certainly that's the case in food and beverage. We find that. And we certainly share that message that until you're in the industry, you have no idea what the different pathways are. I see a question already. How would you suggest finding a mentor with everything being remote right now? Catherine, you want to go for that one, and we'll just go around.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's such a fair question. Like, the pandemic has certainly challenged the way we work, and you know, what we would consider normal networking experiences post or pre-COVID. I would you know, go back to basics and start with a phone call. So find out who it is that you want to speak with, and find a way to talk to them. You know, being conscious of their time, asking them would be a good time to connect, and then start talking on the phone. Stephen said it, like, LinkedIn is, you know, there's a lot going on LinkedIn, and it certainly serves all kinds of purposes, but to get somebody's undivided attention on LinkedIn is going to be difficult, especially right now. So try your best to get a personal connection in, and pick up the phone. I think we forget to pick up the phone these days, and there's such value in it still.
Isabel, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like with Catherine about picking up the phone, it's almost like a renaissance, right? We're going back to, you know, can't do everything online. This is as close as we get to in-person meetings right here. We're doing it now. Yeah, I would say getting connected to an organization that's sort of within your general field, whether, you know, what education, it could be education space, could be professional space. Stephen mentioned that. I think that's another great way to connect with like minds. I think you want to be around people that speak to what you want to be or where you see yourself in the future. So find that space. I mean, maybe Nanvi, you can ask us a more specific question, and we can even be of better help, better assistance to you with this particular question. But yeah, I really think, I mean, most of the work I do is in the nonprofit space. So it's organizations that represent members and constituents. And one of the main reasons that they become members and constituents of a nonprofit is so that they are part of a community, and so that they can learn from others, and they're with their own, you know, like-minded individuals. So same in a way, like the nonprofit sector does something similar to what mentorship does also.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a silver linings person, always look for the positive in any situation. And while COVID has brought a ton of negative to our world, I think a lot of things like this, things like the job fairs we're hosting, they wouldn't have probably been something we would have done virtually. And I do think that opens up the door to a lot of people that perhaps wouldn't have been able to attend some of these events. You know, there's a lot more online. I'm hoping going forward there is more of that hybrid, because, you know, I've talked to lots of people that said, I'm nervous, I'm shy, I'm an introvert, I wouldn't go to a trade show or these events that we used to so often say, you got to network, you got to go to trade shows, you got to do this. And there's a certain pocket of the population, certainly new grads and students that are just starting out, that, you know, they feel intimidated and they wouldn't go, but they're much more likely to go online. They could stay quiet, and then, you know, when they feel ready, reach out and ask questions and that sort of thing. So I think there's a lot of positives too. So, you know, Stephen, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, that's a great question, Navneet. I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that most mentors realize this is unusual time. These are unusual times. So folks know that. I still think, as Catherine said, pick up the phone and get to know these folks. But there's nothing hurting you having an informational interview on Zoom. To be honest with you, I've done a lot of them, and sometimes based on my schedule, it's a lot easier for me to do those than it is to drive into downtown Toronto. Right, for someone like me who's 2.5 hours, it's a 5-hour jaunt before we've even spoken, or 5 hours, sorry, going both ways. But people realize that, and I think most will want to meet with you. So do that. Find if food and beverage, find out some of those organizations, who the people are that are working in comms, and set up those conversations. And be prepared. Come with a list of questions. There is nothing worse. And do your homework. I can't make. I'm always surprised how many folks don't do their homework and literally sit down and will say, "Well, tell me about your organization." Well, I want to know what you know about my organization. So come prepared, have those list of questions, and create that email. I'm not a big fan of templates, but create that email template that you can use for email introduction, and try to fine tune it and meet with people online until the pandemic is over.
It's interesting. I recently am working with some new grads that just started co-op students at we've got about 4 or 5 on recently, and I was asked, like, I'm doing my normal onboarding, and this is my, like, in terms of actually as a manager hiring co-ops, so it's sort of my initial. I've worked with students and grads a lot, but actually bringing them onboarding into an organization, it's kind of a new experience. And one of them asked, "Why do you love your job?" Like, I would love to hear why you love. I started Food Grads, and the company was sold to the company I now work for. So it was like, why did you start Food Grads? And really dig in to understand the why. And I love that this new generation, they care about that. Like, it kind of caught me off guard because no one's really asked me that, not for a long time anyway. And I thought it was really cool that they want to know, why do you do what you do? Like, what is the purpose behind it? And I think it's not just about making money anymore, for this new generation coming in. So yeah, I think that's just having the right questions, like you say, Stephen, doing your research, but truly genuinely connecting and having good questions makes all the difference. Do we have any more questions from anyone watching right now? Before I I want to broaden my knowledge before I attempt to write blogs, articles. Listening to podcasts are a good way to start. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, they are great, and start to follow the blogs of the people that either the topics you want to write about, or just people that have well-written blogs. I always say that. 2 things: find people that write good blogs, and try to understand why their content resonates with their audience. And number 2, if you specifically want to blog or write articles about a specific industry, find out if it's food and bev. Go on foodincanada.com, go on foodservicehospitality.com, go on these websites, check out the editors and see what they're writing about. And a lot of time, we're in a content world. There's no reason that as you fine tune your skills as a writer, that can't become a bit of a side hustle, and you can start making money writing content.
That's very true. Does anyone else want to say anything around that? Because I can.
I've got a question for Stephen, actually, Nicole, based on what he just said. So Stephen, what do you teach in your program around building your own brand online?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We talk a lot about this, actually, about building your brand, and more importantly, keeping your brand clean. There is a shock from people and students to this day that people would go on and Google who you are and your brand and get a sense, go on your social platforms. And they do, folks. If I'm going to leave you with anything, you're keeping your brand online clean is super important. We are all cognizant. I'm very cognizant about what I tweet out about, what I put on my LinkedIn, even what I put on my Facebook that can be shared. So you certainly have to invest in your brand. People hire on fit and work ethic, right? And at the end of the day, remember, when you're sitting across the table from somebody, they're literally looking at you and saying, "Can I work with you? Do I want to work 8-10 hours a day? Can I get along with you? Are you going to be fun to work with? all of those different things. So at the very beginning, be very cognizant of your brand online, what you're putting out there, because if you are a constant complainer or something of that nature, it can really come back to bite you in the butt. And it starts very young, and you certainly have to invest in your brand. Whether that's a specific Twitter handle, or if it's specifically crafting social media where you talk about something specific in the communications field, whatever that may be, really spend some time building your brand, and be rest assured that is not going to happen overnight, but it will become better the more you invest in yourself.
I can attest to that. I'm a recruiter, and more these days, when I do the reference checking, when I'm at that stage, there is a clause more and more often now that says they give us full right to go and check the social channels. So I've said that so many times. I keep it clean, get rid of the pictures and things that, even if they don't affect you today, or you think they don't, could bite you in the butt in the future. So
I have a question now. I have to play it back. I have a question for Catherine and Isabel. If you were going to go back and speak to yourself as you were just starting out your career, as many of the folks that will be watching this later on, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say I was probably not giving myself enough credit for the job that I was doing. So just be comfortable and confident in your ability, regardless of how much experience you've had, or who's at the table with you. I was often the youngest person in the room. I was often the only woman. Isabel and I were two of the only women. Agriculture has come a very long way. It doesn't look like that anymore, but 15 years ago it did in a lot of cases. Just to be comfortable in your abilities and confident in your abilities. And once you figure that out, it gets a lot easier.
Fully agree. Yeah, just to be more confident. I mean, when you're younger, right, you don't have the same level of confidence. You think 100, you need to give 150% when 100% will do. It can get more emotional. It can get more complicated, complex. Back to my earlier comment, just follow your own instinct and your own gut on what you want to do and what you enjoy, and stick with it. I believe when you love doing something, the money does follow. I've actually seen that. I've seen that in colleagues. I've seen that with friends. It takes care of itself. I mean, chase what you love, and don't worry so much about chasing the money. There's always time. There's time. You've got a long career ahead of yourself. There's always time to chase more money if you need to, but definitely start with what feels good in your heart and your head.
Yeah, I fully agree. And to follow that, you also have to trust and like the people that you work with.
Yeah. And
because you spend so much time with them, and if you can't trust the people that you're working with closely, then you're going to run into all kinds of issues. So it's you have to really like who you work with. Not everybody, but for the most part. And trust is a major factor.
Yeah.
I can share some stories from someone that has taken the opportunity as a new grad. Obviously today we've got speakers here that have enjoyed a successful career. But Isabel knows Veronica very well. And Veronica Hislop is someone that came to me as a graduate, two food grads, and said, I want to, write. I'm a scientist. We need to do a better job of communicating science, and sort of, in layman's terms, so people understand our message. Certainly now, which I'd love to come to that in a second. But one of the pieces of advice that I heard her give recently was dip your toe in, and this covers all. You've all said this, but you got to start somewhere and find a place. For example, she found food grads where I said to her, go ahead and write, we'll love to share your publish your blogs. And she dipped her toe in, and she was terrified. And I find that with all the students and grads that have worked with us through Taste Your Future and food grads, they're like, I can't write, I can't possibly write. And so you have a message, you have something to say, just dip your toe in, right? Just try. What would you say if someone's super nervous to start, right?
That's a great point, Nicole. And I'll tell you from teaching, I can tell you at the beginning of the first week of the program, I always give them a piece of paper and I tell them to write something for me. And then at the end of the year, I show them what they wrote and how much their writing has improved. I'm a firm believer. It's like riding a bike. Writing, the more you do it, the better you become. Don't buy into the belief somebody is going to tell you that you may have been, you may have not been the best in English. Or you have trouble articulating. It does get better. The more projects you do and the more writing you do, and I'm sure a lot of the folks that are going through academia now can speak to that. But most of the students at the end of the year, their writing improves vastly. So keep writing, keep practicing, find things you're passionate about to talk about, and it'll come through in your writing.
I just want to make one comment on that, Nicole, because you've really hit on something. I think when it comes to, and maybe this again is because communicators are like the jack of all trades, but for some reason, I think there's a misconception that, your writing is like a God-given talent. Okay. And yes, there are lots of people that have writing as a God-given talent, but it's also a skill that has to be developed. Like I remember reading once about Stephen King. He goes to his office at 6 a.m. He sits there all day. He says he writes loads of trash. And he rewrites and rewrites and rewrites. So, I mean, it's a skill that has to be like nurtured and developed. But like anything, not everything is perfect. And you just have to work at it. So I'm really glad you said that, because I can tell you, like, if I'm editing a document, if I've written a document and then I'm going back to edit it, I may be reviewing it like 12, 15 times before I'm happy. And that should be considered normal. Like, I know we live in a fast-paced world and we're generating tons of content and it's frightening for me sometimes, but it does take a long time to do things well. And to accept that and be comfortable in that.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Isabel. And find somebody in your life who you can share your content with, who you can be honest and forthcoming with. I know at our agency, nothing goes out the door without 2 or 3 sets of eyes going on it.
Yes.
It's a rule. We just have, it doesn't matter. And these are people who are, I'm fortunate, I work with 7 or 8 former journalists. So these are women and men that have been worked in newsrooms, led newsrooms, you name it. And everything they write still gets checked by somebody else. So just keep that in mind. Even the professionals or the former professionals, writers, they go through the same checks and balances. So find somebody in your life, whether that's mom or dad, a sibling, a friend, a partner,
yes.
and just sit and be very raw and honest. I've done it with my family members and friends and said, can you read this? What do you think? And it's super important, not for validation, just to know that you're headed in the right direction and that you can do this. And it'll serve you well. It'll serve you well in terms of how you write your emails, to how you create blogs, to how you communicate with your colleagues, right across the board.
I'd agree with that. And it's so important to understand your audience. It makes it a lot easier to write something when you understand your audience. And, the end product is going to be that much more impactful and useful. Especially in communications for agriculture, agri-food, food and beverage, like we have a number of different audiences on a number of different things that we push out the door, and you have to be careful, from a number of different angles. And I still do a lot of writing every day. I write at least something, and my key stakeholders are farmers. I put myself in the barn in my mind, and I think, okay, these farmers are super busy, and they're going to get this communication on their phone in the barn, and they only have a few minutes to digest what it is we're trying to say, and what we're saying is really important. So how am I going to get that across? And if you can sort of start from a place like that and then put pen to paper, I find that's very helpful. And it's less overwhelming to actually, write something that is meaningful and people understand what we're writing is not, it's often complicated.
We have 5 minutes left, and before we went live, Stephen, you mentioned you've never seen so many jobs in this arena, in this space. Obviously, we're promoting the food and beverage industry as a place to carve out your career. We say to students over and over, if you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're going to invest your time and energy, what's not going anywhere? And it's, food, air, all those things, housing, you look shelter, you look at the the bottom run there, and you can't go wrong with carving out a career in food and beverage. But you mentioned that communication, PR, those types of roles that you've never seen so many. Why do you think that is?
I think organizations are I shouldn't say quickly, organizations are realizing how important it is. I can tell you, when I started my career, most senior PR people didn't have a position at the table. And when I say that, the senior management table in terms of direction of a company, where a say in where the company was headed, anything of that nature. And that has completely changed. We're seeing several CEOs of companies are former communications people, so they understand the importance of it. I think a lot of companies, and to be honest with you, I think the pandemic in many ways has really shone a light on how important communications is, both internally and externally. I know a lot of organizations we work with have invested heavily in internal communications, because there are a lot of organizations that post-pandemic are either going to a hybrid model or are going to have their folks working at home from on a regular basis. So as Catherine had talked about audience, right? Knowing your audience and then realizing the importance of communicating and communicating to them correctly. And it's the same thing, everything in our industry. I can tell you from working at an agency, nothing's siloed anymore. It's not marketing, ad, public relations, government relations. Everything is integrated and comes together, and it's all campaign driven. So communications is extremely important. And I should say, when we think communications, just don't think of somebody who's sitting in a corner writing press releases and sending them out. There are a plethora of jobs. Social digital is a big one. I tell the students at the college all the time. I have several former students that have gone on and are now social media managers who are running 5 or 6 social platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and are creating 6 different social media calendars, and 6, those audiences on those platforms are totally different. So you're creating content. So there are a lot of opportunities that weren't around when I first came into the industry. So you're at a very good time in your life where, especially in this industry, and I mean that sincerely, you could not have found, and Catherine was talking about the farming community, the agri, food and beverage are some of the best people to work with. They're good people, they're honest people, and they're appreciative of when you do good work.
Isabel or Catherine, you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think you've summed it up. It's a fantastic industry to work in, and it's growing. Like that to me is really exciting also. I mean, we have a growing population around the globe. That means more people have to eat. And there's also higher demands. Like there's, consumer, Catherine talked about it earlier, consumer preferences are changing, demand is adjusting, diets are switching, countries are developing, expectations are higher in terms of food choices, premium products, and there's just a huge number of roles in this industry. And communications, I mean, we say it's like a giant bucket of a career focus area, but there's lots of really important roles. And yeah, it's great to talk about it and great to sit on this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you. I could keep talking because I have a load more questions, but I know we're creeping up to 5. I was going to say there's a lot of mistrust and lots of content out there. So it's learning what to believe and what not to believe. And that's where we need effective communicators, people that have that conscience to put, good work out. So I think my son might be following in your guys' footsteps. So I'm so proud that he's doing that. And to your point, Stephen was not very encouraged at the sort of elementary level, in terms of, not strong in English necessarily, but really found his way because he enjoys it. So, I think that's key. And I can't thank you all enough for joining us today. We might be bugging you for some additional content because I do have a lot more questions, and I can see us connecting you with our marketing team and maybe doing some profiling because, I think, there's a lot more we can talk about. But again, it's 5 o'clock. I said I'd let you go at 5. I know you've all got things to do. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. And if you have additional questions, please reach out. Check the chat right now, and you can see the links to create your profile on CareersNow Job Seeker. And we'll see you next week if you are interested in learning about engineering careers. So thanks again. Take care.